Damn, but she hated Sipani. The bloody blinding fogs and the bloody slapping water and the bloody universal sickening stink of rot. The bloody parties and masks and revels. Bloody fun. Everyone having bloody fun, or at least pretending to. The bloody people were worst of all. Liars and fools, the lot of them. Rogues, every man, woman and child. Karkolf hated Sipani. And yet here she was again. Who, then, she was forced to wonder, was the fool? Braying laughter echoed from the mist ahead, and she slipped into the shadows of a doorway, one hand tickling the grip of her sword. A good courier trusts no one, of course, and Karkolf was the very best, but in Sipani she trusted less than no one. Another gang of pleasure-seekers blundered from the murk. A man with a mask like a moon pointing at a woman who was so drunk she kept falling over on her high shoes. All of them laughing, one of them flapping his lace cuffs as though there never was a thing so funny as drinking so much she couldn't stand up. Karkolf rolled her eyes skyward and consoled herself with the thought that behind the masks they were hating it as much as she always did when she tried to have fun. In the solitude of her doorway, Karkolf winced. Damn, but she needed a holiday. She was becoming a sour arse, or indeed had become one and was getting worse. One of those people who held the entire world in contempt. Was she turning into her bloody father? Anything but that, she muttered. The moment the revellers tottered off into the night, she ducked from her doorway and pressed on, neither too fast nor too slow, soft boot heels silent on the dewy cobbles, her unexceptional hood drawn down to an inconspicuous degree, the very image of a person with just the average amount to hide, which in Sipani was quite a bit. Over to the west somewhere, her armoured carriage would be speeding down the wide lanes, wheels striking sparks as they clattered over the bridges, stunned bystanders leaping aside, driver's whip lashing at the foaming flanks of the horses, the dozen hired guards thundering after, street lamps gleaming upon their dewy armour. Unless the quarryman's people had already made their move, of course. The flutter of arrows, the scream of beasts and men, the crash of the wagon leaving the road, the clash of steel, and finally the great padlock blown from the strongbox with blasting powder, the choking smoke wafted aside and the lid flung back to reveal nothing. Karkolf allowed herself the smallest smile and patted the lump against her ribs, the item stitched up safe in the lining of her coat. She gathered herself, took a couple of steps and sprang from the canal side, clearing 3 strides of oily water and onto the deck of a decaying barge. Timbers creaking under her as she rolled and came smoothly up. To go around by the Fintine Bridge was a quiet detour, not to mention a well-travelled and well-watched way, but this boat was always tied here in the shadows, offering a short cut. She had made sure of it. Karkolf left as little to chance as possible. In her experience, chance could be a real bastard. A wizened face peered out from the gloom of the cabin, steam issuing from a battered kettle. "Who the hell are you?" "Nobody." Karkolf gave a cheery salute. "Just passing through." And she hopped from the rocking wood to the stones of the far side of the canal and was away into the mould-smelling mist. Just passing through. Straight to the docks to catch the tide and off on her merry way. Or a sour-arsed one, at least. Wherever Karkolf went, she was nobody. Everywhere. Always passing through. Over to the east, that idiot Pombrine would be riding hard in the company of 4 paid retainers. He hardly looked much like her, what with the moustache and all, but swaddled in that ever-so-conspicuous embroidered cloak of hers, he did well enough for a double. He was a penniless pimp who smugly believed himself to be impersonating her so she could visit a lover, a lady of means who did not want their tryst made public. Karkolf sighed. If only. She consoled herself with the thought of Pombrine's shock when those bastards deep and shallow shot him from his saddle, expressed considerable surprise at the moustache, then rooted through his clothes with increasing frustration and finally, no doubt, gutted his corpse only to find nothing. Karkolf patted that lump once again and pressed on with a spring in her step. Here went she, straight down the middle, alone and on foot, along a carefully prepared route of back streets, of narrow ways, of unregarded shortcuts and forgotten stairs, through crumbling palaces and rotting tenements, gates left open by surreptitious arrangement, and, later on, a short stretch of sewer which would bring her out right by the docks with an hour or two to spare. After this job, she really had to take a holiday. She tongued at the inside of her lip, where a small but unreasonably painful ulcer had lately developed. All she did was work. A trip to Adua, maybe. Visit her brother, see her nieces. How old would they be now? Ugh. She remembered what a judgmental bitch her sister-in-law was. One of those people who met everything with a sneer. She reminded Karkolf of her father. Probably why her brother had married the bloody woman. Music was drifting from somewhere as she ducked beneath a flaking archway. A violinist either tuning up or of execrable quality. Papers flapped and rustled upon a wall streaked with mould, ill-printed bills exhorting the faithful citizenry to rise up against the tyranny of the Snake of Talons. Karkolf snorted. Most of Sepani's citizens were far more interested in falling over than rising up, and she had other business. She scratched at her groin, trying to find a comfortable position, but it was hopeless. How much do you have to pay for a new suit of clothes before you avoid a chafing seam right in the worst place? She strode along a narrow way beside a stagnant section of canal, long out of use, gloopy with algae and bobbing rubbish, plucking the offending fabric this way and that to no effect. Damn this fashion for tight trousers. Perhaps it was some kind of cosmic punishment for her paying the tailor with forged coins, but then Karkolf was considerably more moved by the concept of local profit than that of cosmic punishment, and therefore strove to avoid paying for anything wherever possible. It was practically a principle with her. Her father always said that a person should stick to their principles. Bloody hell. She really was turning into her father. Ha! A ragged figure sprang from an archway, the faintest glimmer of steel showing. With an instinctive whimper, Karkolf stumbled back, fumbling her coat aside and drawing her own blade, sure that death had found her at last. The quarryman, one step ahead. Or was it deep and shallow? Or Kurikan's hirelings? But no one else showed themselves. Only this one man, swathed in a stained cloak, unkempt hair stuck to pale skin by the damp, mildewed scarf masking the bottom part of his face, bloodshot eyes round and scared above. "Stand and deliver!" he boomed, somewhat muffled by the scarf. Karkolf raised her brows. Who even says that? A slight pause while the rotten waters slapped the stones beside them. "You're a woman?" There was an almost apologetic turn to the would-be robber's voice. "If I am, will you not rob me?" Well, the thief seemed to deflate somewhat, then drew himself up again. "Stand and deliver anyway!" "Why?" asked Karkolf. The point of the robber's sword drifted uncertainly. "Because I have a considerable debt." "That's none of your business!" "No, I mean, why not just stab me and strip my corpse of valuables, rather than giving me the warning?" There was another pause. "I suppose I hope to avoid violence, but I warn you, I am entirely prepared for it." He was a bloody civilian, a mugger who had blundered upon her, a random encounter. Talk about chance being a bastard. For him, at least. "You, sir," she said, "are a shitty thief." "I, madam, am a gentleman." "You, sir, are a dead gentleman." Karkolf stepped forward, weighing her blade. A stride length of razor steel lent a ruthless gleam from a lamp in a window somewhere above. She could never be bothered to practice, but nonetheless she was far more than passable with a sword. It would take a great deal more than this stick of gutter trash to get the better of her. "I will carve you like—" The man darted forward with astonishing speed. There was a scrape of steel, and before Karkolf even thought of moving forward, the sword was twitched from her fingers and skittered across the greasy cobbles to plop gently into the canal. "Oh," she said. That did change things. Plainly her attacker was not the bumpkin he appeared to be, at least when it came to sword-play. She should have known. Nothing in Sepani is ever quite as it appears. "Hand over the money," said the mugger. "Delighted." Karkov plucked out her purse and tossed it against the wall, hoping to dart past while he was distracted. Alas! He pricked it from the air with impressive dexterity and whisked his sword point back to prevent her escape. It tapped gently at the lump in her coat. "What have you got just there?" "From bad to much, much worse." "Nothing! Nothing at all." Karkov attempted to pass it off with a false chuckle, but that ship had sailed, and she, sadly, was not aboard. Any more than she was aboard the damn ship, still rocking at the wharf for the voyage to Thond. She steered the glinting point away with one finger. "Now, I have an extremely pressing engagement, so if—" There was a faint hiss as the sword slit her coat open. Karkov blinked. Ow! There was a burning pain down her ribs. The sword had slit her open too. Ow! She subsided to her knees, deeply aggrieved, blood oozing between her fingers as she clutched them to her side. Oh no, sorry. I really didn't mean to cut you. Just wanted, Ow. The item, now slightly smeared with Karkov's blood, dropped from the gashed pocket and tumbled across the cobbles. A slender package, perhaps a foot long, wrapped in stained leather. "I need a surgeon," gasped Karkov in her best "I am a helpless woman" voice. The Grand Duchess had always accused her of being over-dramatic, but if you can't be dramatic at a time like that, when can you? Probably she really did need a surgeon after all, and there was a chance the robber would lean down to help her and she could stab the bastard in the face with a knife. "Please, I beg you." He loitered, eyes wide, the whole thing plainly gone further than he had ever intended, but he edged closer, only to reach for the package, the glinting point of his sword still levelled at her. A different, an even more desperate tack, then. She strove to keep the panic out of her voice. "Look, take the money. I wish you joy of it." Karkov did not, in fact, wish him joy. She wished him rotten in his grave. "But we will both be far better off if you don't take that package." His hand hovered. "Why? What's in it?" "I don't know. I'm under orders not to open it." "Orders from who?" Karkov winced. "I don't know that either, but—" He took the packet. Of course he did.